Hello friends, welcome back to my channel Certheads. In this video, we are going to quickly go through a setup which will help us proceed further in our next videos. In our next videos, we will be using this particular setup to set up a lab environment in which we will be performing hands-on lab. Now, let me set some expectations. This video is not a Terraform or a GitHub tutorial. However, after going through this particular topic, after going through this set of videos, you will be able to understand and write Terraform code, which is very easy to understand. We'll be using this setup to in our further videos to set up our lab environments, and it will also give you an understanding of the concept of infrastructure as code. Now, why this concept is important to understand? In exam, you will be getting questions around infrastructure as code, and it will be beneficial if you understand the concept. We will also be setting up GitHub and we will set up VS Code along with this so that all of these three together will help you in proceeding with the labs. Now, why GitHub is important? We'll be storing the code in GitHub. It is easy to manage and version the code. And going forward, you can also clone repositories. You can create branches out of your repositories and you can work on them collaboratively with other developers. You can follow along with me, and also you can clone my repository. I'll be providing all the links in the description box. However, I would strongly suggest you to create your own repository in GitHub and set up the environment. Let us understand how we will be learning Terraform. We will not be learning Terraform all of it in one go. We will be picking up the pieces of information which are relevant to us, and we will be building upon that information. Instead of creating resources manually, we will be using Terraform to create the resources. This should give you a foundation which you can build upon later, and you can also become an expert on Terraform. Terraform, let us talk a bit more about Terraform. What and why is Terraform? Terraform is an open source tool provided by HashiCorp, which is the company which has created this. The language is called HashiCorp Configuration Language, also HCL. Now, Terraform is very popular. Why is it popular? It is because it is cloud agnostic. It works on any platform. So the Terraform code can be, if you know Terraform, you can write code for AWS, for Google Cloud Platform, for Alibaba. Most of the providers support Terraform. Next, you can build your environments very easily and you can destroy it in one go. You do not have to create resources manually, which is really a pain when you have a lot of resources to create. In our previous videos, we had created resources manually. However, it was just one or two resources. But as we move forward, we will be creating complex environments, and it will be very difficult to set up these environments or these resources one by one. So Terraform also allows you to write, plan, and destroy environments. So you can write the environment, you can plan about it, and you can delete it as well. We will be setting up Terraform on our machines. We will be installing some open source code editor, which is Visual Studio Code. I prefer Visual Studio Code. You can use any other code editor. We'll create a free account on GitHub and we will create a repository there. We will connect to our Azure subscription using Visual Studio Code, and we will be installing some extensions on Visual Studio Code, for example, PowerShell extension and Azure CLI extensions. So let us understand the Terraform workflow. So Terraform has four major steps. The first is init. Terraform init. It is used to initialize a directory which contains the configuration files, and I'll show you what are the configuration files and what they mean. Plan. When you say Terraform plan, it checks the syntax and produces a plan for implementation. Apply basically does the apply of the plan. It basically applies the changes, and it allows you to reach the desired state. So desired state is basically the changes which you wanted in the environment, the resources which you wanted to create in the environment. And destroy, it will destroy the Terraform managed infrastructure. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and go into our environment. Before that, I'll give you a brief overview of what we are trying to create here. Here we are just trying to create a resource group. We will not be creating a VNet as of now. We will be probably taking it up in the next video, but today we will just create a resource group. And the primary thing which we want to achieve today is to set up the environment so that we will be able to use it going forward. So in order to deploy Terraform, you need to go to the Terraform's website and you need to install Terraform. Now, This is pretty straightforward. You can go and refer to the documentation. The documentation is available for Mac OS, Windows, Linux, and most of the operating systems. So go ahead and install Terraform first. So once you have Terraform installed, install VS Code. Again, VS Code will be available to you for different operating systems. Select your operating system and install the VS Code. Once you have VS Code installed, on the left hand side you will see there is something called as extensions. So install the PowerShell extension. So I've already installed it. So you can just click on the extension and you can click on install button and it will install it. Next, you should go also and install something called as Azure CLI. Now, why Azure CLI is required? Azure CLI is required for you to connect to the Azure subscriptions. So there is a documentation available for installing Azure CLI, and I'll be sharing all the links in the description. So no need to worry. Once you have all these set up on your system, so the system part is done, then you should go ahead and create an account in GitHub. So it's free, so you can just create an account. So once you have an account ready, on the right hand side you can click on your repositories. If you do not have a repository, just click on new and give it a name and a description and create the repository. So once you have the repository ready, which I have already done, I have created a repository for certheads as AZ certheads. So as you create a repository, you will see there will be a file which is automatically created, which is readme.md. It just creates, it just has information about what this repository all about. So once you have the repository ready, we'll be creating some files in the repository. So let's click on add file, create a new file, and we are going to create the provider file. And you should name it provider.tf. TF stands for Terraform. So you have to basically enter the code here. So Terraform required providers, Azure RM, source is HashiCorp, version is 3.0. This provider.tf file tells Terraform which environment this code has been written for. Is it Azure, is it AWS, is it GCP? So we are going to use the Azure provider and commit the changes. You can find this file in my repository. I'll be sharing the link to my repository. You can copy and paste the file there. Next, we need to create a backend file. So just copy the code from my backend.tf. I'll be adding the file here. I'll be creating a new file. We'll name it backend.tf and I'll be pasting the content here. So I'll tell you about these resources which we are specifying here, but as of now you can just copy and paste it. So once you paste it, you will see there is a backend Azure RM. So the resource group name is this and the storage account is this, and there's a container and a key file there. Now what this essentially means is we are telling Terraform where it should store its backend configuration. So what is this backend configuration? So when Terraform runs, it creates a state file. Basically, it understands what is the current configuration and it creates a state file. If you do not provide it any configuration, it will create a blank state file. Now, as and when you keep on adding resources, the state file gets updated. So when you apply something, so if you create a main.tf and you write a code and you apply it, the state file gets updated, and the state file basically writes what changes Terraform has done on the system. So you should never ever touch this state file. This state file is completely managed by Terraform. When you destroy the resources, the state file will get updated and it will write what resources it has destroyed. So in order for Terraform to understand what is there, what are the managed resources by Terraform in the environment, Terraform needs to have this state file. Now, this resource group and storage account is not there in the subscription as of now. We will be creating that. So once we have everything ready, now let's come to Visual Studio Code, and you will see there is a clone git repository option. Let's click on that and it will ask you for the clone from GitHub option. So what I will do is I'll go to my repository and I will click on this code option and it will give me a URL. I'll copy this URL. I'll go back to Visual Studio Code. And I'll click on clone and paste this URL. So this basically what I am trying to do is I am trying to connect my Visual Studio Code to GitHub. Now once you clone it, it will copy all the contents of the repository on your local system. I have basically selected desktop and repository as my repository destination. And once I do that, you will see cloning has happened and it asks me, do you want to open the clone repository? I'll say okay, open it. Now what has happened is the Visual Studio Code has now created a connection with GitHub. Any changes which we do now on, we can also push it back to GitHub. So let's click on New Terminal and we will change it to PowerShell. Now we have connected to the GitHub. Let's now connect to Azure. So we will be writing AZ login -- tenant and your tenant ID and click on enter. It will open up a web browser and it will ask you to authenticate to your Azure portal. So use the credentials of your Azure portal and sign in. Once you are signed in, it will say you are logged into Microsoft Azure and you can close this window. So I'll close this window, go back to Visual Studio Code, and I can see that I have connected to my tenant. Now what I am going to do is if you have multiple subscriptions in your tenant, you can set your subscription name. So I have set my subscription name, the subscription in which I want to create the resources. Now next I am going to create a storage account for the Terraform state file, and the code is basically AZ group create -- location, the location where the resource group needs to be created, and the name of the resource group. So I provided that. PowerShell should have created. So I'll go to Azure portal and I'll check it. So we have the resource group created now. Now we are going to create a storage account. So we are going to create a storage account here. So what we are saying is AZ storage account create, the name of the resource group, kind of storage account, location, the name of the storage account, and what SKU you should use for the storage account. So I have created that. Pretty good. Now let's create a blob container inside the storage account. So let's go to the portal and check if the storage account is created. As you can see, the storage account has been created here. However, you need a container here so that you can store the state file. So that is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to create a container. Now the container is created. Let's check in the portal if the container is created. Yes, the TF state container has been created, which is fine. Now, once the container is created, we need to tell Terraform that you need to go to this container and you need to init, basically initialize your backend. So I'm going to write one more code here, and you can find all the code in my repository. I'll be placing that, as well as I'll put the commands in the description. So as you can see, Terraform has been successfully initialized, which means right now Terraform understands that this is the storage account in which it is going to store its state file. So now we can say that our environment is set up and we can start writing some code. So what we are going to do is we are going to click on new, and we are going to name the file as main.tf. So main.tf is the file in which you will write all the code which is required for creating a resource. Suppose you want to create a resource group. Where will you find the information? So you need to go to Azure Resource Group Registry Terraform. Now you will find a Terraform registry here which talks about Azure Resource Group. If you click and open the registry, you will find all information about creating a resource called resource group and what are the arguments which are possible in this particular resource group. So what I am going to do is I am going to write it as it is here. We'll say resource. When we say resource, Terraform understands you are trying to create a resource and you need to tell it what kind of resource you want to create. So I am going to create Azure RM underscore resource group, and you need to give a name of this particular block. So I will say AZ Cert Head Lab RG. This is not the name of the resource group. This is just the name of the resource block. So next time if you want to use this particular resource block, say you want to tell the name of the resource group to another resource block, you can call this resource block with this name. This is a kind of an alias. So Terraform is highlighting that there are two problems. It says you need to provide a location and a name attribute. So I'm going to say location and I'll give it in double quotes UK South. Next, I'm going to give a name attribute, put it in double quotes and provide it name. So I'm going to create a resource group. The name of the resource group will be AZ Cert Head Lab RG01 and the location is UK South. Make sure you always save once you have made any changes to your main.tf. Okay, so the Terraform has initialized, and let us try to understand what are the changes which Terraform will be doing on our Azure state. So we will run the command terraform plan. It should provide us a plan of all the changes it is going to do on the Azure infrastructure. So it has given us an output, and let's understand the output. So plus here means create, and it is saying that Azure RM resource group, this will be created. The resource ID will be known after it has done an apply. The location will be UK South and the name of the resource group will be the following. So let us try and apply this. Terraform apply, and you can give an auto approve flag. So normally when you do an apply, it asks for a approval, yes or no. So if you give this flag, it will not ask you for any approval. So I normally use it because I would see the plan and understand these are the resources which need to be created. This is not something which you would like to do in a production environment, but yes, in a test environment, it's fine. And we can go and check in our subscription if there is any resource group. Right now there is only the state resource group. There is no other resource group. And once it applies, we will check back. It says apply complete. So let us refresh. And you can see the resource group has been created. Good. So now we have our Terraform environment set. We have Git set as well. So now we will be pushing the changes which we have made to our GitHub repository. We'll give a message and then we will sync. Sync is done. The changes are synced. We can go and check in our Git repository. Let's refresh, and main.tf is updated. So in this exercise, we have connected our GitHub to the VS Code. So any coding which we do, we can directly push into the GitHub. We have also connected to the Azure subscription, and we have created a resource group using the Terraform syntax. It's a very simple beginning, and I'm sure that going forward we will be creating more resources, and we will try to make our code better using those resources, using those coding standards. Well, thank you very much for watching this video. I will see you in my next one, where we will be taking the deep dive into SAP on Azure. If you like my work, please comment, subscribe, and share, and like my video. This will help me motivate and also create more such content for you. Thank you. I'll see you in the next one.